Do you have 30-year-old children that still live with you and don't contribute financially to the household or do anything in the household? We're going to talk about shifting from basic financial lessons to empowering kids to be financially independent. And Lynn, take it away.
So this podcast is more meant for kids that are early 20s and later that, they're just finishing post-secondary education and maybe they're trying to figure out navigating if they have to pay down, say, some OSAP. And then they're trying to figure out what's the next phase of their life going to look like. Are they going to be renting somewhere? Are they saving to buy a house? Are they going to be getting married? How long are they going to be a cave dweller and live at your house? Or do you need to sit down and have regular conversations to help them and guide them so that, they don't have a parent come to me? And this happens a lot. I've had a few situations where a parent said, my son's still living with us. He's 29. I need you to convince him he needs to save. It's like, okay, well, you just told me what your son does for work and he's making about $60,000 a year. And you want me to convince him that he needs to put $100 or $200 away. Where on earth is his money going, right? So maybe some car insurance, gas in a car, cell phone. Oh, we actually still pay for a cell phone. I'm like, well, that's your first mistake. You have a 29-year-old living at home. I think the 29-year-old can probably pay for their own cell phone now.
Yeah, I would like to think so.
So I think the key is sitting down and talking to them about, I think the key is to start young. But now if you're watching this and, maybe you've missed that window of opportunity when they were younger, talking about budgeting and saving, I always say to people, use me as, the
bad guy.
I'm the bad guy all the time. Hey, we went and met with our financial advisor and I was a little embarrassed to say, you're living at home, you're still 29 and there's no plan for you to get out. Let's have a discussion about a plan, or hey, I watched a podcast with a lady that has been a financial planner for 22 years. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, but how are we going to eventually help you to leave the nest? Or if you're not going to leave the nest and you're going to be here, but we need to teach you some responsibility, maybe you're having a discussion with your kids about them contributing financially. So they're helping you to pay rent because, these grown children cost you money for groceries, increased hydro fees, etc. I'm sure they're not buying toilet paper and shampoo and all those things. Like they cost you money. So having those conversations with your children and saying, at some point, do you see yourself moving out? And if so, let's get you on a path so you can save. So whether you figure you're maybe going to be renting or what investment vehicles are available if they want to purchase their own first house.
It's such a delicate issue, I think, to talk about because, as we've discovered, people are different. Everybody's different. Yeah. Everybody's relationships are different. Yeah. I know that there are certain cultures where they tend to help out the next generation as much as they can. Mm-hmm. I was a wedding DJ for a number of years, and I remember I got the biggest shock in my life when the father announced, that they had purchased a fully furnished new house for their daughter, for her wedding. That was their wedding gift. Wow. I was like, talk about...
That probably doesn't happen every day.
Yeah, but
cool.
But I think it does. Oh. That's the culture, right? And it's now the responsibility moving forward for her and her husband to do the same thing for their kids.
Wow.
That's the way that it goes, right?
That's probably a whole other podcast. That's about how different cultures...
Yeah, different cultures look at things differently, right? And it's hard to kind of record this podcast and kind of give a one-size-fits-all kind of prescription to everybody because there's so much. But from a personal standpoint, I think, in having been born and grown up in North America, if you're 29 years old making $60,000 a year and you can't find a way to help your parents and it's becoming detrimental to their retirement plans, something's got to change there.
Agreed.
Something got to change.
Yeah. So it's how do you bring up that conversation? It might not be easy.
Right.
I will tell you, I grew up in a household where we talked about money. So, we talked in the last podcast. I got my first part-time job at 16 and my parents had me meet with their financial advisor and save money. And I love my parents, but I wanted to buy my own house. So I actually sat down with my dad and I said, okay, if I were to buy a house, what would this look like? And my parents lived in a nice, it was a good size raised ranch. And I mean, my first home was not going to be as elaborate as the house that they had. But I sat down with my dad, and keep in mind, I was not a financial advisor yet. I was a university student, and I also had a full-time job while I was going to school. And so I said, what would we be looking at for a mortgage and utilities? I mean, I was a business student, so I was very in touch with how much things cost.
Right.
But he pulled out all of his bills, and he showed me. We were very open about money. And the sooner you can get in this habit, the better. You might be getting out of your comfort zone, right? It might not be the most comfortable subject for you to talk about money with your kids, but it's a lot easier to do it sooner rather than later, where you're like, okay, now you're 29, you're making all this money. We'd like you to give us $500 or $1,000 a month to help pay for some bills if you're going to be living here forever. So my dad laid it all out and said, so we did some estimates to figure out, okay, can I afford to move out and buy a house? So I think that you can have similar conversations with your kids. And if you're not comfortable, financial advisors have conversations with people every day. I have conversations. I've had people come in to see me. I had the one gentleman come to see me. I had met him at a wedding show. And, he and his fiance hadn't done a budget. And I said, what does she make? And he said, I don't know. Okay, you're marrying somebody, you have absolutely no idea what they're making. Well, she's a teacher, and I happen to do a lot of income tax returns and have an idea how much most teachers make based on the number of years they've been working. I think it's really important that you have a conversation. I mean, this gentleman was 26, 27 years old, looking to buy a house with somebody that had no idea how much she made. So you could be watching this. You might be a parent that you're figuring out how to have a discussion with your children, but you might be watching this and be in your 20s and think, okay, well, I'd like to, rent a place or own a home with, my girlfriend, boyfriend, fiance, significant other. What's that going to look like? So again, the sooner you can have these discussions about money, just, hey, I watched a podcast, have them watch this. Money again can be a very taboo subject. But the sooner, I can't remember what the stat is of the number of people that fight and divorce over money, but that's the biggest source of people divorcing is that lack of communication about money. So the sooner you can have the communication, the better.
So I want to ask you this, because I saw one of those meme things going around on social media, and it was like how the previous generation has ruined it for this generation because everything is just like unattainable. So houses are unattainable.
I completely disagree with that.
Okay.
Because I was scrolling through Facebook on the weekend, and if you're in the Windsor area, my office is in East Windsor in Riverside, and there was a cute house that I saw. It was $400,000. I'm sure that house, 5 years ago was probably $200,000. So It has gone up. But let's think about this for a second. If you go to purchase a home that's $400,000, and let's say you save, so we use that 29-year-old that's living at home with mom and dad. You're 29. Okay, maybe you have house insurance or car insurance, you have some gas in your car, and you have your cell phone, you go with your buddies. But you should be able to save at least half of that income. If you can't put $30,000 a year away when you're living at home with, exactly, something's wrong. So let's say you do that for 3 years and you put $90,000 down, okay? Or just over 90,000. If you can get to 100 and or 90,000, then you wouldn't have to pay CMHC fees, right? Because you have 20,000 down. Then you have a $300,000 mortgage. That same young man at $60,000, he can still afford a $300,000 mortgage. Yes, you have property taxes, etc. It's completely doable. Yeah. It's just, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Look at, okay, what area do I think I'm going to live in? Okay, $400,000 is probably a pretty general starter type house now in the Windsor-Essex County area.
Yeah.
It's completely doable if he would stop making excuses, and mom and dad are still making excuses for this kid. And hey, could we bring them in? Because they were a little embarrassed to ask me. It's like, okay, but like if I followed your son around for an entire week, I'm sure I could point out a zillion things he spends money on that he probably doesn't need. But he doesn't have a plan, right? So he makes sure he pays his car insurance and his cell phone, but he doesn't have his house fund in there. And there are some fantastic ways to save. So the first home savings account, you can save in a tax-free savings, you can save within an RSP, making sure that young people are putting away money, making sure young people are putting money in through their group plan. We just had a young lady in the office here a couple weeks ago meeting with another advisor. There are 3 people at a pretty large employer in our city 3 young people that still have not signed up for their group plans that they've been working at for over a year. They're leaving free money on the table. Okay, so
don't do that.
Yeah, so talking to your kids, are they working a full-time job where they're eligible for to put money into an RSP and do a matching program?
I think there needs to be a culture shift that happens, because when I read that meme too about like how the previous generation has destroyed everything for the younger generation, I think it's so easy to complain about everything and blame everybody and blame the government, blame whoever's prime minister, blame whatever, municipal government, the mayor. Everybody's so good at complaining, but nobody offers the solutions. Nobody has ideas about how we can do this. And I think that's what's so important about us having these type of discussions and having people listen to it. Because here's the truth. Life is hard. Life is going to hit you very hard. It's never been easy. The thing about making America great again, or like going back to the times when things were good, it's never been good. It's always been challenging for everybody of all walks of life, no matter what time period you choose. The only time that you have is now. So it's either going to choose to be a victim and blame everybody for the situation you find yourself in, or you're going to look at it and go, you know what? What can I do to change my situation? And I think that right there is the personal mindset shift that people have to take and take responsibility for your life. And I think I have seen people overcome incredible odds to make something of themselves. What was their excuse? None. They got off their butts and they did it. And then I have seen people that like have had the world given to them and they still might end up being 29 and living in their parents' basement. Right. It's like, you got to make that choice to make something of yourself. And I think there are ways to do it. You just got to believe it and you got to work hard, and it's not going to be easy. I'm going to give you hands down. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough, but you just got to persevere.
But you got to choose your hard, right?
Yes,
like think about being a 29-year-old. Like, okay, if you want to like, I don't know, go on a date and meet somebody, then it's like, oh yeah, let's go back to my parents' house and tiptoe down to the basement. But you want your own space? I don't know. Like, I'm a 29-year-old man, clearly. Yeah. Have those discussions. I actually just had a client last week. She came in, she brought her daughter. She's 22. She just started a new career. And so we did a budget. We had a discussion about money. And we're going to do another follow-up meeting in 2 weeks. And her mom's like, okay, you met a Lynn now. You're on your own for the next meeting, right? So we have a budget. We laid out, okay, well, what are you making? What are your expenses? What are your goals? I can appreciate mom's here. So your homework over the next 2 weeks is to really refine your budget. You say you only spend $500 a month on clothes. Well, maybe you spend a little bit more. And there's other items there that, mom doesn't know about. We're gonna have a more concrete budget for you. But you know what? Kudos to mom for saying, hey, you have this job. Here's a professional that I trust. I'll go with you for the first appointment. She's made the introduction, and this young lady, we're going to set her up and I think she's going to do great. Sometimes it's just giving them a little something to help them. So if you have your own financial advisor, ask them, hey, would you mind sitting with my daughter or son at whatever age that they are and educate them, and whether the child, or young adult is comfortable with you sitting there or not, but at least help get them onto the right path. My parents did the same thing. 16 years old, I wasn't given a choice. Maybe things are a little bit different. I was like, you're saving. So you're going to sit down with this guy and you're going to start saving. I mean, it was a pleasant experience for me. He treated me like I was an adult, even though I was only 16 and saving. So kudos to him, because I felt great putting away money, saving for my long-term future. So hopefully it can start off as a positive experience. And sometimes they just need that little push to get them going. It's like going to the gym. The hardest thing about going to the gym is putting your damn running shoes. Yeah. Just get your running shoes on and get out the door. Sometimes it could feel like so hard to kind of get the ball rolling. But if you introduce them, or you say, okay, go see this person, or if you have your own financial advisor, hey, do you mind if my daughter or son sit in, or can you talk to them? Maybe it's just something as simple as that. Or, hey, you've been working and you have this new job. Why don't we set it up so that you put, $100 a week or $100 a month into a tax-free savings, and let's watch that money grow and accumulate. So sometimes it's just very basic education. You don't have to sit down and have these big formal conversations with kids. You can start off really small.
Small, yeah. It doesn't have to be this big life-changing thing. Just little tips or guidance here and there to help them get along.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 29-year-old living in with their parents making 60 grand.
Oh, there's way more. I got all day to tell stories, and that's. And I get some parents, they want their kids to live at home forever, and
yeah,
that's great. And I love my parents. Don't get me wrong, but I was 21, turning 22 when I moved out and bought my first house.
Yeah, I was 22 when I left home too. Again, everybody's different. Everybody has situations. I think ultimately our goal is to prepare you for financial retirement and have you in a space where you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle, right? And you have to look at everything and every challenge that is impeding you from attaining that goal. And if I don't know what their whole situation is like, and I don't know what the relationship is like, but I just know for me, if my 20-year-old son was living in my basement, not paying for anything, and it was costing me my retirement and my ability to retire in a lifestyle that I'm comfortable with, I'd be having a serious conversation with them.
Agreed. Yeah, I would think at some point you'd be slightly resentful of your kids.
Oh, for sure.
And it's going to change your relationship. And I've had situations where, moms and dads have the affordability and they tell their kids, okay, we're going to charge you for rent. And then they tuck it aside. And when that kid moves out, then that money will go towards a down payment on a house or help pay for a wedding or something else. Some people don't have that affordability, and that's okay too. It's like, hey, groceries aren't cheap, but if you're going to live in this house and you're making a good, solid income, you're going to have to contribute or show me that you are saving and you have a plan to eventually expand and move out. And if you feel uncomfortable facilitating that conversation, if you have somebody, walk into a bank, wherever you do your everyday checking, walk up to the customer service. We like to set up an appointment with a financial advisor. If you're not in the Windsor area or, we're not necessarily, if you're not going to jive with us, then get the ball rolling. Have them sit down with somebody and just have a conversation. And yeah, they may or may not want you to be sitting there with them. But if a professional can sit down and say, okay, you're taking home, X number of dollars per week, and what are your expenses? And now you have the surplus of $1,000 a month. What are you doing with it and how are you allocating it? Because if you don't allocate it, you're going to spend it on garbage that you don't need.
Right.
Let's get a plan set up. Right.
All right. So I guess we'll leave it at that one. Anything else you want to add? I think that was pretty complete.
No, start sooner rather than later, right? So if you've taken the time to watch this, I always tell people, if you go to a seminar or you watch something, do something to take action within 24 to 48 hours. Because you know what? If you don't, you're going to see something else that we're going to put out on, Facebook or a YouTube channel 6 months or a year from now and say, oh man, I wish I really would have listened and done this. Do something to take action. If you're a parent and you're not sure how to start the conversation, say to the young person that's in your house, I really think you should check out what this lady has to say. I was a young lady. I don't know if I call me a young lady. This lady has to say, or if you're a young person, and you want some help and some guidance from your parents, say, hey, mom and dad, would you mind watching this video? This lady had a lot of really good points. I think I need to get my butt moving, and I need your help.
And I'm going to leave you with one thought. Don't be the victim. Ask yourself, how can I? And that's it. We'll see you on the next episode. Hopefully this was helpful to you.